Hey, and welcome to the Reset Podcast. Everything you need to know that your therapist probably never told you. Researched by experts, real life experiences. This is Reset. We are continuing talking about screens today, specifically video games. Let's jump in. All teens and even young adults have two basic needs: the need to belong and the need to be independent. And here's the thing, y'all. Screens actually give them both. And girls are motivated by being well-liked and being well thought of. And I can relate to this as a girl, as a woman, that I like, knowing that people like me for who I am. I'm accepted, I'm loved, for sure. And boys are motivated by being in charge of themselves and being in control of themselves, kind of like, I have this power, I'm in charge. And that's what video games give them, right? It gives them this power. So social media for girls is giving them this affirmation, likes, comments, you're so cute, girl, love this dress. And then boys are getting motivated by, I'm in charge of this game, I make the decisions, I got this, kind of a thing.
Well, and that's exactly right. And so you see where it feeds into these, really these egos of both male and female. And at one point, the social validation cycle, where I could continue to figure out an instant temperature of who I am socially and wanting to belong, like a lot of women do and a lot of teens do. But also, obviously, it's affecting, women in their 20s and 30s and even 40s as well. We all probably seen that before. And you're right about the boys aspect. You think about, there's a great story about, and we're going to go old school here, He-Man. And He-Man would grab his sword and he'd say, I've got the power. And that's not by accident. That they did some marketing research and they brought in a bunch of 5 and 6 year olds and put in a room with a double mirror, and where they were viewing them. And so the kids would be playing around, the boys would be playing around, because they're trying to find a doll. For the time, Barbie was going out of control, and women, all these girls were buying Barbies. They would need, what's a doll for boys? So they created He-Man, which to this day I think it's just a, they must have seen a picture of me back in the day with my shirt off, because it's obvious.
Obvious. I agree, babe.
Obvious with the
Love you. 18
pack. And so what happened is that they found the boys would grab certain toys. They would grab certain toys and they would raise them up and say, I got the power. And the boys would try to fight for it. And then they would throw it and they'd go and get it and grab it. And some say, I got the power now. And, not so now they got that kind of that mantra for He-Man saying, I got the power. And so what does pornography do for a lot of boys? Well, it gives them power over their sexual self. What does video games do? Well, it gives them power over others when it comes to trying to, maybe if it's fighting them, shooting them, or maybe it creates power in their own world.
So the book Irresistible that we were talking about before by Adam Adler also talks about the shape of the iPhone and why it's addictive. This is so fascinating. They put, how old were the babies? 6 months old?
I think it was like 6 months old.
6 months old, and put a bunch of different shapes and just, things in front
pictures of people.
Yeah, in front of these babies. And they found that the shape that these babies kept gravitating towards was a rectangle and the exact size of your iPhone. That was so terrifying reading that.
Basically, it's like one of the reasons why a lot of things got addictive. Like he was just like,
and he confesses that in the book, right?
Yeah, he talks about how he's been part of just helping things get popular, or the usage of different apps and that kind of stuff. And so in so many ways the story is that the brick, the iPhone, the original iPhone, came from a place of like, okay, what is a shape that the brain just naturally gravitates to, that naturally kind of releases like this dopamine feel, and it ends up being that of that. I think they're trying to figure out too, if I remember correctly, is they're trying to figure out what is the youngest age that a kid could be addicted to something. And we're talking about behavioral addiction. So there's a difference between substance abuse, substance addiction versus behavioral addiction. And one of the chapters of the book talks about in the aspect of heroin addiction from Vietnam. And so with that is, it's really kind of considered now, it is considered that behavioral addiction is in many ways maybe more difficult to overcome than substance abuse. And I say that out of respect for those who dealt with substance abuse and that kind of stuff. But when it comes to behavioral addiction, like porn addiction, addiction to like the video games, or if it's social media, like it's really difficult to undo that. In large part because there's not a lot of natural consequences right away. You can hide it. Like you can't look in my eyes. Like, man, you look like you've been playing video games, or maybe you can. I guess it comes to that. Maybe some eyes are getting a little red, but you can't just smell on someone's breath. So to maintaining that,
the accountability level's totally different. Wow,
totally, really hard too. And so, but I think it was 6 months was the age when they saw that a person can be addicted to like a behavior, like obsessed with something, and it was like I think it was a wooden brick that looked just like a cell phone, which is really interesting to think about.
So here's a question. Are there a certain population of kids who are more bent towards screens and screen addiction? Like, is there like a group of kids?
Well, there is. And so the group of kids would definitely be kids who have learning disabilities. So like ADHD, dyslexia, we definitely see them have a higher opportunity to be addicted to video games, pornography, social media. And there's probably a variety of reasons for it. I think one thing is that, especially with teenagers, you find a lot of your worth in academics. And if you're not someone who's academically blessed, and may not even athletically blessed as well, like how do you fit in? Where do you find your worth and value? And so a lot of them find them in actually playing certain games and enjoying that aspect of it. Then you also get this aspect of which, kids, if they have a tremendous amount of social anxiety, how do I feel my sense of belonging and social self? Well, online gaming can do that. Social media can do that as well. But mainly we see is ADHD, learning disabilities. I would also, it's naturally bent more towards video games. Is naturally bent more towards boys, as we talked about, than for social media is girls.
So when it comes to video games, why are they bad? Why are they so addicting? And are all video games bad? Like, let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I have a hard time using the word bad as well. Sometimes I use the word unhealthy, and so obviously it's case by case, but we're going to paint this with a wide, paintbrush, because we can't just sit down with someone and say, okay, what's going on with you and what's happening. But as I talked before, a lot of video games is all the fun of war without the consequences and responsibility, for it. And so Dr. Craig A. Anderson from ISU, with his research, he said, evidence linking video games, this is his quote, evidence linking video games to antisocial personality is as strong as evidence supporting smoking to lung disease. So he's talking about complete causation. And so the causation in which people play video games or addicted to video games or play certain amount of video games, we'll talk about here in a second, or certain video games, that can lead antisocial personality disorders. So what does that mean? Well, antisocial personality disorders is like people go against the norm, people who don't want to tend to rules and laws of society, those who use others and have slight characteristics of narcissism. And so, and the weird part about antisocial anxiety disorder or antisocial disorder, it's really nothing to do with like being not social. Because people think, antisocial means you don't talk to anyone. That's not true. That's more of like a schizoid personality disorder. But in this case, it's more of the concept in which they just don't feel like the rules or laws of society.
They don't fit into social norm, kind of. Then
that's true too. They're kind of just a non-conformance in life. So he talks more about like they're more likely to speed or more likely to get in DUIs, more likely to feel like, okay, I can do what I want when I want to, kind of creating really a Superman mentality that comes with it, which a lot of teenagers have in general. Dr. Peter Whitebrow, from the director of neuroscience of UCLA, calls video games the electronic cocaine. Chinese researchers call it the digital heroin. I mean, if you know about this, China about 15 years ago created a boot camp for kids who are addicted to video games. They had a lot of kids being addicted to video games, and they need to do something for it. So they created a boot camp, like a camp, like kind of thing, like a, just a place where they go, get away, detox, and they get them active. They get them going again. I mean, doesn't take much to Google China and video games and kids who've died of it. They play like 72 hours in a row, 48 hours in a row, 72 hours in a row of video games, and they just seize. And so, in the concept in which you've heard this for a digital heroin, how do you guys actually know? So why do you guys call it that? Well, in Irresistible, they talk about this, where with the research of heroin of Vietnam veterans veterans, that they could see the highlights of the brain, like the neural pathways of the brain of a heroin addict. And they take a picture of that and take a picture of some of the video game addiction and the highlights. Basically, it mirrors it. It looks exactly like
The
it.
same part of the brain is highlighted.
Yeah, the same part of the brain that highlights heroin addiction also does that when it comes to video games, which is really crazy to think about. So we don't say that lightly. Dr. Andrew Doan, the head of addiction research for the Pentagon and U.S. Navy. So now we're talking about the government's coming involved with this. And he's been researching video games, and he calls video games and screen technologies the digital drug. Specifically, it acts like a Schedule II drug, like a narcotic. Like cocaine's like a Schedule II drug. So it goes back to the whole heroin aspect. Studies have found that teens who spend more than 2 hours a day playing, and we're now getting to like specifics here, 2 hours a day playing games get more fights and more arguments with authorities than do their peers who don't. So now we're looking at the antisocial personality symptoms. And so if you spend 2 hours or more a day playing video games, then you are more likely than to get in fights and arguments with, let's say, parents, teachers, professors, whatever it may be, than peers who don't.
Am I crazy for thinking 2 hours is a lot?
Yeah.
That's
2 hours.
a lot.
No, I was saying, no, you are crazy. It's actually not a lot. A lot of kiddos play 6 hours a day,
Oh my
5 hours
gosh.
a day.
Okay, sorry, continue.
And we talk about this. A little side note. I have a 1984 Nintendo. It's right behind me. It works perfectly, which is so wild to think about. For 1984, this thing still works. You got to blow on the cartridge.
They don't make them like they used to, babe.
And I know, but then it's like you get to these Xboxes and they all die in a matter of a year. But we would play. We would play with our friends next to us. And it'd be very social. And you watch them play and then you play. But after a while, you kind of get bored with it because,
There's only so much you can do on.
Well, I was thinking like the turtle always comes out the same spot. The coins are in the same place. There's nothing new, which is actually really important when we start talking about more about the aspect of why is it so addicting. These video games are just different now. Honestly, they're really good. Moreover, they found out is that the more time you spend on video games, the more likely you are to develop anxious or depressed brain. I know, and there's a great book called The Digital Invasion. Two neuroscientists from UCLA basically say that video games turns the cucumber brain into a pickle brain. So basically, it turns into burnout, and actually it creates something that specifically is called neurofatigue. And so neurofatigue, we didn't hear about this for a long time until really video games and social media comes out. And so specifically, we see this as well when it comes to any type of blue screen in general. For specifically teenagers, for 2 hours or more, you get neurofatigue, meaning what? The brain has an inability to remember things during that time, has an inability to learn new things. So the kid wants to study after doing video games for 3 hours, and good luck on that. High levels of cortisol, so they see that the brain, so for beginning, social media and video games specifically will release like tranquility neurotransmitters, like this feels good, this is great, this is awesome. Then you get to the 2 hour mark. When it happens is that they start turning to more cortisol, more stress, and so the brain just it's just paralyzed. It can't problem solve and work, and so we call that neurofatigue. Me, some parents will see this and realize, oh my gosh, my kid turns from Jesus to Judas from before and after video games or even social media. And the answer to that is yes. Long-term research we found out is that video games are more likely to kids who do video games or people who do video games, play video games, more likely to abuse alcohol, nicotine, and have risky sexual behaviors. And so and some people are like, well, why is that? And the reason why is really God made us with something called mirroring neurons. And so mirroring neurons is the aspect of what we see, we become. And so if you're just constantly flooding yourself with these experiences, and remember, a lot part of video games, to be really good at video games, you got to do stuff that's very antisocial to be good. So if you just, in many ways, how many hours does it take? I don't know. But if you watch some amount of, and play a certain amount of behaviors, your mirroring neurons take on that. So what you see, you become. This is why a lot of people, if they have alcoholic parents, they have a higher chance to become alcoholics. One part of it is because they watch it being done, they see it being done, and so they end up becoming what they see. And so be aware of that. And so the physiological arousal is greater and totally different from any real world experiences, and thus real world cannot compete. Homework cannot compete with video games. Sports cannot compete the arts. I go back to is video games is so good right now. It's just so good that it is so hard for it to compete to real world on the physiological level. Just the amount of dopamine being released and serotonin. That do you want to play video games? Or do you want to ride your bike and skateboard? Yes, you have kids that are like really into obviously the outdoor sports, but man, a lot of parents, and by the way, even marriages, this is coming up where adult men would prefer to play video games to even have sex at times.
This is the part of our show where we talk about our opinions on the things that we observe. Observe and then respond, don't worry, you cannot be wrong. It's all about the way that your mind works. Observation feedback.
I was watching the new Irwin show. Steve died, which we all know was really sad. And so I guess his family has a show. I don't know. It's called The Irwins. I have no idea. But I love my docuseries. I think I talk about this every time. But in this case, they have like a TV show with them. And I was watching it, and she was, I don't know the daughter's name, but she was on, I think, Dancing with the Stars.
Bindi.
Yeah, sounds good. Let's make up names. And so she was feeding some poisonous tree frog that was bright blue, but it was only 2 inches big. So a little small guy. And so they eat crickets. And they're talking about how they can't feed it the larger crickets or the medium-sized crickets because they're too smart. Like the crickets are too smart. And this tree frog needs like these tiny baby crickets. Are you following me on this one?
I am completely
they're really
you.
tiny. And so the interesting part, this is why, is that this tree frog doesn't even go hunting. He just sticks on like a rock or sticks on a tree or that kind of stuff. And when these tiny baby crickets are coming around, he taps his little like finger on the rock or the tree where it may be.
Thank you for that example. The audience doesn't get to see what I just saw.
And what happens is these baby crickets are not really smart, and so they go after the sound. So they go towards this little tree frog, and he eats them up. But they found the larger ones, the adult one, they don't fall for that trick. And the medium size, I don't know, teenage crickets, they just don't fall for it. And so the small ones do. They hear that sound, they go after it. They think it's something. I don't know what. I think they said that it's a sound like their mom or dad makes, the cricket mom dad makes. It's like a sound of safety. And they go after it. And it's actually a sound of not safety. It's death.
Not safety.
It also reminds me of when I was in West Africa. And I was in this people group called the Marantse tribe, which is just it's a segregated tribe in West Africa in the African bush. And so they have shepherds, and the shepherds take care of basically the goats and the lambs that are out there. And the shepherds are 24/7 taking care of the animals, but mainly at nighttime because the predators come out at nighttime. The animals sleep under, the shade. It's really hot. It's one of the hottest places in the world where you're right in the equator, about 117, 118 by noon. It gets really hot all day. And so at nighttime, these animals, they're out, they're eating, but so are the predators, which is the lion. And so the shepherds do is they don't call all these animals by name. They instead they use a clicking sound, like with their mouth, like, and the animals know at nighttime to follow that sound. And so if the shepherd sees like a predator far away, he makes that sound, and the animals go closer to the shepherd, and the shepherd protects them. Well, guess what? Guess what the lions do at nighttime to lure the animals close to them? So they found out is that the lion takes their little claw, their little long fingernail, where they have claw nails, claws.
I would safely call it a claw.
It's definitely a claw. And on a rock, he rubs it, or she rubs it, or taps it. There's my sound again. Just like the tree frog. And guess what goes after that sound? The animals, the lambs and the little sheep and the goats. And so the lions have learned to mimic
I was just going to ask, is that a learned behavior from the shepherds
predator.
of the...
Yeah, the predator is so smart. The lion is so smart looking and watching how this goes down.
Learned it from humans.
100%.
That's insane.
It's totally insane. And so what happens at nighttime, the animals don't know what is truth versus lie, what is safety versus the enemy, what is a predator versus my protector. And many ways, if you think about this metaphor of life, is sometimes things that appear to be good, healthy, safe, can actually be in so many ways like the enemy going after us or someone masking themselves as something good. I think about like the old days about stranger danger is the stranger comes out with like, here's a piece of candy or, hey, do you want some ice cream? And so there's things you got to look at and recognize at times we may be pursuing something that can, in our mind, consider to be right, good, healthy, and safe. I think about like the diet trends now back in the 90s are now like early death for you if you do that.
Well, even things as adults, like you get those calls now, right? Something has been hacked or you've won $500 or whatever it is, or a job that you think seems good. And then you start working for sketchy people because now as adults, we're more motivated by maybe money and success. So yeah, it's morphed from candy to money.
Well, you think about online dating right now or just dating in general. Sometimes you have like a narcissistic, per se, sociopathic man, for example, who pretends to act like and be this kind. Yeah, he's making sounds with his little claw and making sounds in terms of, or he's perceiving imposter of someone who's healthy, good, functioning, kind man. And that lures in certain people. So you got to recognize, maybe in many ways, a deeper dive or critical thinking around certain things in our life that what are things that are perceived to be healthy right in our mind that can actually be predator, something that could be unhealthy in our life that's actually masking itself to be good, but it's actually not good.
Remember our last podcast, I think I talked about how I think in good guys and bad guys. And I think, what is going to be a bad guy in my life. So it's kind of this thinking of what's false, what's unhealthy, get it out of my head, get it out of my mind.
Well, I think a lot of times, like, let's say pornography for men is a lot of men, they have this mindset where it's okay. Maybe they get their mind, it's natural. No one's going to find out. It's all right.
I'm only hurting myself.
Yeah. And, in many ways, it lures them in with some type of lie that they perceived as being, or rationalize it as being okay. And then next thing you know, as it slowly goes down, it's too late. It's kind of like the animal one that we talked about when it comes to the Eskimo and killing the wolf with the blood popsicle.
Yes, it's interesting to think how wildlife and other animals basically mimic and do the same things we do as humans in their own way. Deception and, trying to get their prey.
Now back to the show.
I remember you saying, too, we used to live next door to two teenage boys, and we were talking, I think, with the parents one day, and we were talking about how once you cross that threshold of the bigger, better toy or the more engaging this or that, the thing they did before is not as interesting. So that's why the electronic side of the world is so important for us to realize when are we going to introduce that? Even we were talking about with electric scooters and stuff the other day, the real scooter is not exciting anymore. But that was so exciting a couple of years ago. You get the newer, the better. You start what's the word I want? Your
baseline.
Yeah, your
absolute threshold
baseline
changes. Yeah.
So that is another thing to think about as parents and even as adults for us to think like, where is that desensitization happening?
Yeah. And so, okay, so let's just get back to this concept of what makes this so addicting or make it so bad. Let's just talk about what makes it addicting. Here's what we know. And this goes back to what Adam Alter talks about, which is with his research, he has equation. Here's the equation. Competition plus socialization equals addiction. I'm going to say it again. Competition, competing, plus socialization, so you have a sense of socializing with the person, equals addiction. So let's talk about this. Let's break this down in two ways, social media and video games. So video games. The moment the video game became online, it added a socialization aspect to it. And then you already had the competition part. The competition without the socialization, there is no addiction to it. And so you insert online. So you ask kids, I ask my kiddos, hey, the new Call of Duty came out. You can play the campaign or online. But they say all the time, online, online, online. Campaign's boring, Joe. Come on, man. And we were used to what? Campaigns. Everything was campaigns. Mario Brothers was a campaign. Sonic was a campaign. There's no online socialization part of it.
And then when it comes to social media, you are having this socialization, obviously, because you're commenting or, you're receiving comments. And here's where the competition part comes in. Even if you think you're not somebody who thinks like this, is the likes, the how many comments, right? Or the competition of their vacation was better than mine or whatever it is. So then you kind of get into this addiction of looking at people that you want to be like or, commenting. So you get comments and before you realize it, you are in this competitive kind of side of your brain, but then you're getting your appetite fed where you're socializing with other people and you feel, oh, they like me. They said I looked cute, or I'm going to comment on them, and oh, they liked my comment. And that's the cycle on social media.
Well, and you're also competing against yourself because what they found out is you're competing against yesterday's photo versus today's photo. Let's say yesterday's photo, this is like behavioralism 101. Let's say yesterday's photo gets 520 likes. Today's photo gets only 30 likes. And so yesterday's photo, I'm wearing a bikini. In today's photo, I'm just wearing normal clothes. You think, what's the odds are that my next photo is going to be a bikini shot? Probably a lot. Right. So there's this aspect of behavioralism going on. The example of this is Instagram. Instagram was really not that popular or that big deal until they created a couple things. Number one, they created a like button. I remember when they didn't have a like button. And so you have the like button now. Like button created a lot of things. Competition, right? But also the socialization part of you getting to check out who liked it. Then they created, of course, then the aspect of the comments. And so then that really boosts up the socialization part of it. And so you see where Instagram just would not have lasted as an app until they added this aspect of competition and socialization. So this equation is used so often when it comes to apps becoming viral or becoming addictive, right? Competition plus socialization equals addiction. And so are all video games born equal? Like we talked about, the answer is no. Are all of them unhealthy? No. So how do we know? How do we quantify an unhealthy video game? How do we know? And so here's how, and let's go through it. And so parents, this is on our guide for screens that's free on our website, resetgroup.com. It's 2 or more of these questions. So if you have 2 or more yeses to these questions, then the video game itself is considered to be unhealthy for you. So why don't you go ahead and go through.
Does the game involve characters that harm themselves?
Meaning, do they kill each other? Or do they punch or hit each other? If so, then that's a yes.
Does the harming occur more than once in 30 minutes?
So think about that. So does that actually happen once in 30 seconds? By the way, we look back in the old school days, like Super Mario Brothers. If you know Super Mario Brothers well, you could get it done actually in 2 minutes without touching anyone. When Bowser goes up, you just go underneath him and they jump on the little axe. I think it's an axe. I don't know. But, you don't have to. You think about even the aspect of Sonic. Sonic was the same way as well. Tetris, no one's getting killed there. And so we look back, there wasn't really a lot of, I would say one of the very first games where we actually felt like there actually was killing was probably 007. Remember 007? Oh, man,
yes.
That was
That's
good.
like the one I played with my brother.
Yes. Then you look back at it and you realize how bad the graphics were. Our son does play Minecraft. Minecraft?
Yes.
Yes. It's very
We just started
pixel.
it last year. Yeah.
Yes. And they're probably many years away, but he's just building.
Well, he'll like kill the chickens and it'll turn into meat and he can eat it. And then
normal.
you can kill the zombies too.
Yes.
But it just goes like you hit him and it turns red. Like there's no graphics that you're seeing. It's like, boom, okay, he's gone now.
We kind of grew up with the Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter age.
They don't die though. Just
Mortal
get
Kombat.
knocked out. Oh, no, the
Mortal
other one.
Kombat?
What's the one that Sawyer does on Genesis?
We do have the Street Fighter 2 that I got.
I mean,
oh my gosh.
It is like hilarious.
It's
really
pathetic.
bad.
But then remember Mortal Kombat when you had to put the code in for the blood? Were you around for that? Or are you too young?
I just watched my brother play video games. I didn't really play them a lot, to be honest. I liked Sonic.
Yeah.
And
like
007 when I look back. Because that was when we could play together.
That's true. Okay, so what's the third
so
question?
Is the harm rewarded?
Meaning that when you do harm the person or whatever, do you get points? Do you get upgrades? Do you get achievements?
Is the harm portrayed as humorous?
So meaning when you harm them, is it funny? Is it enjoyable?
Are non-violent solutions absent or less fun?
Meaning, going back to, let's say, Mario Brothers, can you get through the whole game without attacking someone or killing someone? So you think like the big ones right now, like Fortnite. I call it Fort Crap, as you know. Fortnite. After you kill somebody, shoot someone, I guess, what you want to call it.
You do a dance, right?
You could do a dance if you want to. Can you technically win Fortnite without killing anyone? Yes, you have to hide, and you have to hope the person somehow, I guess you could.
Are realistic consequences of violence absent from the game?
A good example of this is like Call of Duty. It could take 15 shots until you get killed. That doesn't happen in war. I mean, I've never been to war. I've seen, obviously, the documentaries. We have a few neighbors who are veterans.
It's not realistic that 15 shots and you're not going to die.
No, it's not going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. So we'll put that video game into the category of potentially being unhealthy if you play for a certain amount of time, which is a lot of video games right now that my kids like. I guess one that's kind of popular right now that maybe would not go in that category would be kind of like Minecraft or even, Rocket League. But if you think about things like, I don't know, Call of Duty, Black Ops, or Modern Warfare, or even WoW or LOL, or even, even Smash Bros. Although Smash Bros is fun. It kind of gets a little violent there.
Mario Kart is fun and not violent.
I'm horrible at Mario Kart. Why am I so bad at it?
I don't know.
Because I'm a really good driver in real life. Maybe that's the problem. You have to be...
Maybe that's why I'm good at it, because I'm not a good driver. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
So what happens with all this? Like 2 or more of these yeses, and you play the kid. Let's say for teens, I play video games for 2 hours and more. Well, here it is. We see the following stuff, and long-term research has shown this: change of personality with the kiddo. We see teenage tantrums. You ever seen your kid have teenage tantrum? Throw the controller, punch the wall, punch the screen. You're like, oh my gosh, are you 6 or 16 years old? And so we see that in many ways. It is really just a tantrum, not even a teenage tantrum at that point. Desensitization to violence, similar like we see with pornography, where you watch a lot of pornography that you end up being desensitized to others. You have lack of empathy and that kind of stuff, right? Increased violence to self. So it could be from self-mutilating to punching yourself to punching your hole in the wall and breaking your hand. I've seen that before. Decreased personal motivation. You mean like they don't want to get a job, or they have excuses to find a job, or they don't want to do schoolwork and they get poor grades, things like that, right? They have a kind of failure to launch mentality, and a decreased need of connectedness. Meaning like, I don't need to go outside. I don't need to play outside. I don't need to go hang out with people. My people are all on Discord. My people are all online. And so in-person connection kind of goes away when it comes to that. And that's what we see. Even
connecting just as a family too, right? Friends and family.
100%. Yeah. I have parents that say, I can't get my kid to eat dinner with us. I can't get my kid, I don't think I've ever said no to pizza. This is why people use pizza as a way to help them move. You know how me move? No. I'm going to buy pizza. Oh, I'm there. Like pizza's like, do you remember in elementary school when they would somehow convince you through a end of the year pizza party?
Oh, absolutely.
If we bring in all these box tops,
you've never had pizza before or something. We're gonna make it.
And then it comes in like one piece each and it's just cheese. You're like, come on now. This is how we do this, So with video games too, with addiction, we see more boys than girls. Not shocker, like I talked about before. And I always thought, here's the interesting part too, is video games has a direct it's a direct appetite stimulant effect when it comes to it, meaning worse than TV. We always laugh because when our kids turn on the TV every day, they say, I'm hungry. Well, TV stimulates the appetite. Well, video games does too, where it stimulates the appetite. I want to eat, or I want to drink something sugary or something like that. And so we see obesity when it comes to video games players, because it stimulates part of the brain where they want to eat. And so I just think like the overall, to me, understanding of this is that we have to recognize that as human beings, situation dictates disposition in life. This is the big thing about the Stanford experiment in 1970, is that you put yourself in a situation like playing video games a lot or playing or watching social media a lot. What happens is your disposition, your personality, and who you are. There's going to be an effect. There's going to be a change. There's going to be a physiological change, a neurological change in you.
So let's break down the appropriate amount of time children should be on screens. And when we say screens, we mean blue screens. So we're talking more about a phone, a tablet, iPad, computer, blue screens. So this was set by the American Academy of Pediatrics. So children ages 0 to 2 should actually have 0 screen time. Babies actually need to use all their 5 senses to develop at this stage. And so like the digital screen is going to develop only 2 of the senses, which is seeing and hearing, right? They need to be experiencing the world fully.
So when you have like a 1-year-old, 2-year-old, and you're out to dinner and they're crying, don't give them your phone.
Exactly. So children ages 3 to 5, they say 1 hour per day, because this is the age of make-believe and they don't have that logic at this age that they need to spend playtime with other kids or just being creative on their own with all their toys. And then children ages 6 to 12, no more than 90 minutes. That's an hour and a half, y'all, no more. And then 13 to 19, which you would even argue 25 at this point because they're underdeveloped brain, right?
I just don't think they have researched anything older than that because pediatrics.
Older than 19, yeah. So 2 hours a day. That's why a lot of these things we're talking about keep saying more than 2 hours, because that main age for video game playing is for sure that 13 to 19 age range.
So glad